The death penalty is justified
Okay, go ahead.
political
Sorry, I'm
violence.
interrupting you. Go ahead.
2 weeks ago,
Go ahead.
a man named Andrew Johnson, who was found guilty of assaulting a police officer on January 6th. He had a prison sentence of, I think it was 2 or 3 years. He had not started his prison sentence yet. He was pardoned.
God damn. It's so loud.
He was
No, you're
pardoned
right.
by Donald
I
Trump.
know, you're right.
He was pardoned by Donald Trump, so he never served his sentence for assaulting a police officer on January 6th. He was just arraigned in court because he molested an 11-year-old boy 3 times with subpoenaed text messages of him telling this 11-year-old boy, quote, "I was a January 6er. I'm going to win a bunch of money because I'm an American hero. I'm going to leave it."
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I'm thrilled you chose to join this discussion. It's not just some background debate to zone out to. Imagine 3 individuals seated for a talk, and moments later it morphs into something much more piercing. The conversation revolves around political violence, accountability, and a perplexing pardon case filled with more queries than answers. As they dig deeper, the inconsistencies become blatantly obvious. What took me by surprise wasn't just the intensity, but the swift transition from superficial chatter to something profoundly enlightening. It becomes apparent where each person stands under pressure, and not all hold their positions equally. Stick around until the end, as the final segment of this dialogue puts everything into perspective. It's a pivotal moment when the tone shifts, making you realize that this issue is far more significant than it originally appeared. Before we dive in, comment below and tell me your location. It's always fun to see just how widespread our audience is. All right, let's dive in. Hold on right there. This is the point where the conversation starts to make real sense. What's unfolding about immigration cuts through all the noise. Instead of reducing it to a simplistic yes or no debate, it recognizes the complex reality. It's not just black and white. You can't simply shout deport everyone and call it policy. That's merely a slogan, not a plan. The moment you simplify a complicated issue like immigration to that extent, any attempt at resolution has already ended. That's when the discussion shifts, and this is where tone becomes crucial. When the issue of political violence is raised, it's addressed head-on. There's no hesitation and no sugarcoating, regardless of who is affected, just a straightforward acknowledgement of its wrongness. This consistency is what lends the statement its weight. But the conversation doesn't end there. It delves into how different events are perceived, and this is where it turns uncomfortable. When one incident is recognized immediately while another is ignored, it prompts a larger question. It's not just about the incidents themselves, but about who gets acknowledged and who doesn't. Once this contrast is highlighted, it's challenging to ignore. The discussion shifts from isolated events to recognizing patterns. It brings up whether responses are truly consistent or selectively applied. That's where the tension really escalates. The conversation then extends to how political violence is defined and remembered. At this juncture, people are faced with a choice: either confront it directly or start veering away. In this moment, it's clear which direction the conversation begins to take.
Do Democrats condemn all of it?
Yes.
Because there was a very interesting article in a magazine I very rarely read called The Atlantic,
Yeah.
which pointed out that as of last year, contrary to previous trends, political violence became predominantly a left-wing phenomenon rather than a right-wing phenomenon. Now, this was based on evidence from a generally more left-leaning institute, obviously in The Atlantic, which is left-leaning. And what's funny about it is, even using their own data, their data which exclude instances of left-on-right political violence, including one that I experienced myself when Antifa showed up and threw an explosive at a building when I was on stage. It was great. It was okay. We survived. The poor cop was injured, but she made it out okay eventually.
Good.
That wasn't even counted in the data sets of political violence. The BLM violence, which killed dozens of people, wasn't counted in the data sets of political violence.
And
so hold on. The point I'm making, Harry, is...
Go ahead.
Even using data sets which, by and large, exclude left-wing political violence, even the Atlantic magazine admitted that today, political violence in America is predominantly a left-wing, not a right-wing phenomenon.
So but there's data undercounted on both sides, I'm sure. I've had political violence against me by Republicans in the streets. It was awful, and obviously I'm fine, I made it. But that was not counted in any of these studies.
If I may ask.
You can ask. Well, it was funny. We were in the bar in New York City. My friends and I were walking around. These guys came up to me. They were like, "Oh, Harry Sisson." They shoved the phone in my face. They threw a beer, and we threw some punches. It's fine. It's never. I've never talked. I never talked about it before.
Are you breaking news on it?
No.
But you and I have also both been swatted before.
I've been swatted. I've had the FBI sent to the FBI sent to my house, my school, all that crap. It's been bad. But do you condemn what Donald Trump did by mocking Paul Pelosi's assault?
Yeah, I wouldn't mock Paul Pelosi's
Okay,
assault.
great.
Wait, but hold on. But that was,
by the way, he was
but that
assaulted
wasn't.
by-
And wait, hold on one
That
second.
wasn't-
Do
that
you
wasn't
condemn?
the question. It was yes or no.
Do you condemn Donald Trump pardoning the police
I don't
officers?
condemn Donald Trump. He's the greatest president of my lifetime.
Well, that's
okay,
super
so
fucking
that's
weird.
the difference.
Yeah,
That's
wait,
wait.
Wait. Time out. Hold on, Michael. And then I'm gonna ask the crowd as well. Do you condemn Donald Trump pardoning people who beat police officers?
Which people? You're talking like Alex
the people
Preddy?
on January 6th.
You're talking about Alex Preddy?
No, on January
Renee Good?
6th. Do you condemn
I
it?
do condemn Alex
Okay,
Preddy
great.
and Renee
Do you-
Good in their political
whatever.
behaviors.
Do you condemn the
agree.
people who beat police officers on January 6th?
I think that
and
January 6th was
Okay,
one
you're
of
not
the
going to give me an
most-
answer.
Was one of the
$20
most
if you answer
mild
my question.
examples.
$20 if you answer my question.
Yes or no?
I'll
Do you
answer your
condemn?
question.
Do you
Well,
condemn
what's
Donald
the
Trump?
question? Then I'll tell you if it's
Do
20
you
bucks.
condemn Donald Trump pardoning people who beat police
No,
officers?
I don't.
Can I wait?
I want to ask the crowd now.
Wait.
Wait, hold on. I'm going to ask the crowd as well. Do you guys condemn Donald Trump pardoning people who beat police officers almost to death? I don't care about you. Yes or no? Yes?
A Trump supporter is the only person who died.
I want to point out, wait.
Thank you.
This guy
Thank
over here
you.
said who died on January 6th. I want to point out there's been 4 Capitol police officers since that day who have taken their own life in relation. Hold on, can I finish?
That's not the question he asked.
Hold on. In relation to that event, because they had a bunch of MAGA people telling them that they were part of a deep state conspiracy. They had nowhere to go. They had families. They took their own life.
Freeze that frame right there, because this is where everything starts coming apart at the seams. You can spot the pivot when the debate attempts to spin the story, asserting that political violence is predominantly from one faction. Yet, there's an oversight. The data isn't complete. Important events are absent, yet it's still showcased as the whole truth. And upon that moment, it stops being an analysis. It turns into cherry picking. Then comes a straightforward query: do you denounce attacks on law enforcement officers? Rather than a straightforward reply, there's a noticeable slowdown. There's stalling, diversion, everything but a straight answer. That is why this incident is so striking, because if supporting law enforcement is your consistent stance, it really shouldn't be difficult. It should be immediate, but it's not. And that pause hints at something deeper. It implies that the stated principle isn't being applied evenly. Once that inconsistency emerges, it becomes impossible to overlook. Then the discussion wades into heavier territory. And this part is frequently overlooked: the human toll. The psychological burden on officers caught amid chaos. These were individuals on duty, upholding institutions, carrying out orders, and many of them were later faced with severe public critique, accusations, and pressures. When such a climate is created, it exacts a significant toll, a very real one. That's the aspect of these talks that often diminishes. Not the political side, not the headlines, but the people themselves, those who bear the burden long after the discourse concludes. And when this reality is highlighted, the tone shifts once more. Now it's not merely about debates or stances, it's about repercussions. And whether those repercussions are being acknowledged or conveniently overlooked.
So that's number one. I don't think it's reasonable to say that
You're blaming
the only
you're now expanding the definition of political violence to include ex post facto suicide.
I'm not. He made a
I
claim.
think you are.
No, he made a claim that the only person who died at January 6th, for example, was Ashley Babbitt.
That's correct.
I think it's dishonest
political
to not
violence,
talk
yeah.
about the police officers who have PTSD and then took their
Right,
own life
so what
because
you're
of
doing
the
is you're
event.
expanding
And
the
furthermore,
definition of
Michael, you don't
political
fully
violence to
condemn
include
political
suicide.
violence.
And I also want to point out
You don't fully condemn political violence.
Hold on. I want to point out.
No, I don't fully condemn political violence in as much as
Y'all agree with that?
No, I don't. I mean,
Someone
war,
clip that?
war can
Clip
be
that?
justified
Oh, okay,
political
okay.
violence.
Political
State
violence that's
violence,
motivated.
How about this?
officers
How about this?
shooting criminals in certain cases. That's justified political
no,
violence.
you-
The death penalty is justified
Okay, go
political
ahead. Sorry,
violence.
2 weeks
Go
ago,
ahead.
2 weeks ago,
Go ahead.
a man named Andrew Johnson, who was found guilty of assaulting a police officer on January 6th. He had a prison sentence of, I think it was 2 or 3 years. He had not started his prison sentence yet. He was pardoned.
God damn. It's so loud.
He was
No, you're
pardoned by Donald
I know,
Trump.
you're right,
He was
yeah.
pardoned by Donald Trump, so he never served his sentence for assaulting a police officer on January 6th. He was just arraigned in court because he molested an 11-year-old boy 3 times with subpoena text messages of him telling this 11-year-old boy, quote, "I was a January 6er. I'm going to win a bunch of money because I'm an American hero. I'm going to leave it in my will for you." And he was basically trying to, obviously, he was a predator, right?
Okay,
and so my point being is that Donald Trump pardoned this guy. This 11-year-old
Well, he
boy.
didn't pardon him for child
Hold-
abuse.
but
Good grief. He pardoned him
He's
because
arguing
it's
out the
overzealous
pardon.
prosecution
no,
of political
it's
dissidents.
almost as if
That's
some,
a completely
No,
disingenuous
it's not, because
analogy.
if somebody is willing to assault a police officer on January 6th, it's almost like they are more likely to commit violent crimes within all of our communities. This 11-year-old boy. No, this
What
they
about
commit
the
less
illegal
crimes.
immigrants? You know, a few of them have molested children
I'm
too.
talking about
and you don't want to deport him, and that's why I won $20 from
I'm
Mary.
talking-
Let's
I won
get
the
to
20 bucks on that.
microphone.
He answered the question.
I'm
Whatever,
talking
it
about.
doesn't
I'm
matter.
talking
not
about
giving
a
you 20 bucks.
Donald. I'm talking about a Donald Trump
The guy
supporter.
that went to- the guy that
I'm
went to
talking
jail
about a
for
Donald
Field.
Trump supporter who, at the direction of Donald Trump, showed up to the Capitol, beat a police officer, got pardoned, and then molested an 11-year-old boy, and we're defending it. What are we talking about?
I don't think
How-
anyone's defending
You're
it.
defending
Why
it.
do
You
you
could
vote
defend
that
his
way?
pardon.
Hold up a second. This is where the whole law and order stance starts unraveling. A particular scenario is introduced. An individual found guilty of assaulting a police officer gets a prison sentence, yet receives a pardon without serving any time. Let that sink in. The very system that insists unwaveringly on supporting law enforcement suddenly bends when it serves political interests. The discussion then delves deeper, taking a more intense turn. It's alleged that after receiving the pardon, the same individual ends up in court again over very serious allegations involving a minor, with signs suggesting premeditated actions. The argument posed is that the sense of protection or approval from the pardon could have influenced the individual's self-perception, untouchable, justified, or even rewarded. Regardless of whether one agrees with this link, it's tough to overlook the larger concern. Pardoning someone convicted of violence against police forces raises significant questions about consistency. If law and order is the rule, it should be universal, not just aligned with self-interest. This is where the emotional punch of the argument hits. It moves beyond mere politics or ideologies. It morphs into a matter of consequences. Tangible consequences that impact real lives. When potential harm arises that might have been averted, it leads to a much more challenging dialogue. It's no longer about political sides, but about accountability. Because when exceptions are made for significant offenses based on political affiliations, the system isn't being upheld, it's being undermined. No amount of rhetoric can truly hide that contradiction. So the question is, where do people draw their boundaries? Share your thoughts in the comments, hit like if this got you thinking, and subscribe for more insights like this. Catch you in the next video.